What is up, everyone? Welcome to TCR Live. I am joined by my good friend Kyler Burd. Kyler, how are you on this fine day when history is unfolding in the world around us?
I'm doing well, trying to absorb some of the news that's going around, but kind of glad for a little bit of a distraction talking to you about some Cardinals football. So glad to be here. Let's get into it.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, Kyler's a historian, studies history, and I study sociology. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. We don't want to completely ignore that that's going on. It's crazy. People are suffering. A lot of bad stuff's going on. There's not anything that would benefit from us taking that off for that. So we recognize that, acknowledge that, and then we're going to have maybe a little bit of a distraction for now. But thank you all, anyone who's joining us tonight. I know there's also a Suns game going on, checking out the score. But we want to keep the Thursday night schedule. So, at the same time. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of springboard off of the video that I did this last week on sort of budget or value free agents. And I asked Kyler if he would put together a list of some of his value free agents. And then we're going to talk about a few of mine as well. And some of mine are going to pull from the video that I did, but I've actually added a few that weren't on that video, a few that were on kind of my list that didn't quite make the video, just so it's not completely redundant if you've seen the video I did this last week. So we're going to talk about some of our value free agents that we think might fit needs for the Cardinals, talk about why we think they're, a fit for the Cardinals. And, and kind of want to acknowledge, I know a lot of people want the Cardinals to sign some really high price, big time, big name free agents. And we don't disagree that they should if they can. Yeah. But you have to fill a roster with a combination of, blue chippers, draft picks, and value free agents, right? So this is part of the puzzle. We're not saying these necessarily should be the best free agents the Cardinals sign. These are just some we think might be good fits at a budget. So real quick, let me say hey to the folks that have commented in the chat. Klaus and Nasty jumped in here much earlier to kind of do the eyeballs. And we got Nick L saying hello. What's up, Nick? And he's asking, how about Connor Williams from the Cowboys? In fact, why don't we use that as a segue to let Kyler here talk about his first value free agent, one Connor Williams.
Yes, thank you, Nick, for the totally unprovoked segue there for me. So to preface everything, when Joseph asked me to put together my list of budget free agents, we might have slightly different definitions of budget. And like he said, if they do sign some big blue chip players, that's awesome. And honestly, we'll get one. That's sort of like a Steve Keim pattern, I think. One splashy free agent. But you have to fill an entire roster. So you can't fill an entire roster with J.J. Watt type deals, DeAndre Hopkins type deals. So on the free agent market, I think number one priority is guard. And there are a few good guards that are out there right now. When I was looking at free agents at that position, I was looking for quality, of course, but also age. It would be a big thing for me as a guard. I think building that interior and just building the line around a young quarterback like Kyler Murray that I'm still going to assume is going to be the franchise quarterback and be around for a long time, I think is really important. So that brings me to Connor Williams, the guard from Dallas. He's 24 years old, super young, just getting off of his rookie deal. And just like Joseph did, I looked at the PFF salary projections. 3 years at an average of 6.67 a year. That's maybe a little bit pricier than some, but for a very talented guard like Connor Williams, and at that age, I think it's a great price. It's less than what we've been paying Justin Pugh. Connor Williams, I think, has played all of his snaps at right guard, if I'm not mistaken. which also still isn't a problem. Neither of the guard spots this year were great, and historically have been lacking for quite a while.
Just
So
to
I
clarify, he was left guard all this.
left guard. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you for clarifying that because that's even better. He could be an easy replacement for Justin Pugh if Justin Pugh is no longer an Arizona Cardinal, which I do think is pretty highly likely. And the main thing, maybe not the main thing, but one of the best things Connor Williams is good at, he's really good in like a zone scheme, and he's a great pulling guard. And I think when you have a quarterback like Kyler Murray and you have running backs along the ilk of Chase Edmonds, even if it's not Chase Edmonds and James Conner, a great pulling guard like Connor Williams would be a great choice. So $6 million for Connor Williams, to me, that's a budget free agent to fill my number one need for the offense.
Yeah, and in fact, Chris Young here brings up a point that I was going to mention. I'm sure you looked at too. He had a ridiculous high. He had 17 penalties last year, and that's a concern. But if you look out through his career, that was by far the worst. In his rookie year, he had 6, then he had 6, then he had 4, and then 17.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at it as an outlier in his career more than a pattern. Like high penalty years can come from so many different issues, especially on the line, because the 2020 offensive line with their penalty issues and Mason Cole's penalty issues. I don't know what all the scenarios that go into a year of very high penalties for an offensive lineman. If we had Aaron on the stream, I'm sure he would have a little bit more insight for us on that line. But I totally get why Chris would be concerned about the high penalty count, considering the number of times it seems that a Cardinals drive has stopped because of an offensive line penalty. So I totally get that concern, and it's totally valid. I still think a 24-year-old guard at $6 million a year, who's shown the type of talent that he has, I would be all over it.
And I think I'm a little torn on Connor Williams, but part of me looks at the way Silver Wolf here is looking at, getting Connor Williams for $6 million a year would be a steal. He hasn't reached his potential. One of the things I often look at with players that are potential the Cardinals might acquire is I do look at their draft pedigree. Like, he was a second round pick, and I get there are busts and players don't always live up to that, but that tells you there was something there. There was a reason he was drafted in the second round. And then you look at it, I know not everyone loves PFF grades, but his PFF grades, last 2 years have actually been pretty good in the 70s. Even this year with his 17 penalties, his grade was 75.2, which is better than any grade on the Cardinals.
Yep.
So you look at a player who was a second round draft pick, has some talent, you might because of those penalties, there's a chance you might get him for a little bit of cheaper than you might have otherwise, that might, because of the eyebrows that raise. So a guy with talent who has shown he can grade well, and that's, and again, hasn't had, that 17 penalties is far and above over 3 times his average. So, it's and $6 million is not cheap, but it's not crazy expensive either. And if he lives up to his pedigree, I mean, I think it's I don't hate it. It's not, it's a risk that's worth taking potentially, right?
Definitely.
And I hear we're already penalty prone enough, but if he regresses to the mean and gets 5 penalties in a year, I mean, that's, Pugh actually had fewer than that, so that's still not none. But if he gets back to 4 or 5, and grades at a 70, 75, that's pretty good.
Definitely. He allowed 1 sack and 1 hit in 2021. He's fairly durable. I mean, he played over 900 snaps in 2021, and he doesn't really have an extensive injury history. So having a 24-year-old guard till he's 27 or 28, he's the same age as Kyler Murray. I think it's just great value for the talent and potential that goes along with the talent he already has and the age.
Yeah. Let me just say hey to some of the folks that are in here. I can't necessarily. My committed to keeping our show within an hour, so we may not be able to answer every question, but at least want to say hey to everyone who's here. Matthew Runyon, thanks for being here, a longtime supporter of the channel. Someone's asking Calais Campbell's a free agent. I think should the Cardinals go for him? He is a free agent, and I'll tell you, I know Kyler, is someone that Kyler, I know here, thinks that they should consider going after. He's not on our list for today. I wouldn't hate that. They need some interior defensive line. He's kind of the 3-4 defensive end. If the price is right and he'd be willing to come here, I think he could be a big help. Lance is here, great support of the channel. Really appreciate you, Lance. Did anyone see what RG said about telling players truths? Does anyone not believe Kyler will broadcast his stance, or will he is post on social? I didn't see that, hear that. I mean, I think, I don't want to get too much into the Kyler Murray stuff, but I think Kyler is just posturing for a contract, and I think everything else is going to be behind closed doors. That's my opinion. But real quick, is Kelvin Beachum? He's still under contract, right? He's on a pretty team-friendly deal. So yeah. Got Easy No Steroids who's here. Thanks for being here. Base string of the sign next to me was a blockbuster deal. It was amazing, right? Everyone agrees with it, I'm sure. Kirk's Legacy, I think they should sign Sonny Michel. They're going to need to sign a running back or draft a running back if they let Edmonds walk, or so I think maybe, right? So let's see. I think let's see, did he have a single flaw, or did he get a lot of penalties because he's sloppy? Don't know, haven't looked at the tape. That's a really great question. I really don't know the answer to that. All I can say is, again, it was quite an outlier. So I think I have to wonder if it was something, I don't know, something different in the scheme, something, who knows? It's hard to know.
I do think a little part of that on the Dallas line this year was they were overall fairly effective as a line, but they had so many different starting lineups throughout the year because they sort of rotated injuries. Tyron Smith gets injured and then he comes back, and Zach Martin goes out for a few games and then comes back. So I think just not having any continuity on the line would be part of the situation that leads to having that many penalties. And honestly, I don't know the number on what they were either. I guess a lot of them were false starts, but I can look at that for you.
Yeah, it'd be worth looking into, but I don't know. Real quick, and one last question before we move on. I feel like Cardinals should get a free safety. I like their safeties. I think, Jalen Thompson had a great season, Buddha. So I don't think that's a need for them, but, and then let me just say, hey, Vane, thanks for being here. Hopefully Chandler Jones takes a smaller contract, helps going Jones train rolling. I don't think he's going to. It'd be nice if he did, but, we'll see, right? So let me one of the things I did for my picks is I try to sort of mirror Kyler's pick. So, I'm going to kind of go with the same position just to kind of give us a couple different looks. And this is one that is from my video, Ted Karras. And this is kind of sneakily maybe my favorite free agent call for them that I'd like to see, because he's not a big name, but to use a kind of I think there's something elegant about this pick. And what I mean by that is elegant is, a fancy word for doing the most with the least effort. And he solves two problems. He's a good guard. He's not a Pro Bowler, but he's a good guard. Yeah. He is graded better than any Cardinals offense lineman last year, but he also has been a starting center. So you plug him in at one of the guard positions, and if Hudson gets injured again, you slide him over, you bring in one of our backup guards, and we don't have the debacle that we had with Max Garcia playing center. I think this beautifully solves two problems for the Cardinals at a projected salary of, $4.33 million. Is that over 3 years? So, he's a little older. He's 28, but he's actually going to be 29 in a couple of weeks. So, but offensive linemen play into the 30s and play well. Yeah. So this to me is probably one of my favorites in terms of potential pickups because of how he solves both of those problems for a pretty reasonable price.
You're right. That is a very elegant solution to the guard problem. I like it a lot. I have absolutely nothing against it. He is a good guard. New England has been fairly fortunate in their line for quite a while. It's effective. and that price is really good. He's a little bit older, but I totally agree that offensive linemen can play for quite a while. Andrew Whitworth is ancient, and he's still good. Well, I guess he just retired, maybe, but they can play quite a long time. So there is nothing wrong with that deal. I like how you said it solves two problems at once. It probably does that even better than Connor Williams, honestly, and the fact that he has a little bit more playing experience isn't a bad thing.
And here's the thing. It's not out of the realm of possibility that the Cardinals, cut ties with Justin Pugh and do bring in two guards. I mean, there's a universe in which they bring in Williams and Karras. I'm not predicting that will happen.
That would be awesome.
I mean, that could happen, and that would be a really nice upgrade, right? So, yeah. So signing Karras because of the price being pretty reasonable doesn't preclude another guard as well. And Lance, thanks for reminding everyone. I really appreciate everyone. Please hit that like button. It definitely helps with the algorithm and getting, the channel out there, to help people, discover our channel and become part of the community. So, yeah. And again, I apologize if I can't get to every comment. I try to acknowledge everyone at least once in the chat, but we'll get to as many as we can. So Kyler, let's move on to your next kind of budget value free agent pick. And that is Juju Smith-Schuster.
Okay, this one's going to be a little bit more controversial. I can already feel it in my bones. I know some of the things people are going to say. My defense of that is it would be similar to the salary projection, 1 year, kind of like the AJ Green deal, $6 to $8 million. He is never going to be successful, I think, as a number one wide receiver. I know. Just hear me out. He was a wonderful number two wide receiver when Antonio Brown was still on Pittsburgh Steelers. I get it. I don't dig the personality either, but I think he is talented enough, and in the number two spot, he's a more than capable wide receiver. He's younger. He has more speed. He has good hands. I would rather take him on a 1 year deal like that than bring AJ Green back, which maybe that does sound weird to not want to bring a perennial Pro Bowl like AJ Green back. But I think going a little bit younger at that position would help. I think if we do re-sign Christian Kirk and keep him and Rondale Moore sort of splitting the slot, and you have Juju on the other side of DeAndre Hopkins, and DeAndre Hopkins stays healthy, that is a very talented wide receiver core. So I get the concerns about growing up, but also I don't think that's going to lose the team games if he likes to do a TikTok here and now. He's a talented guy. Yeah, he's not a number one, but he's a great number two when another receiver like of the caliber of Antonio Brown or Hopkins is taking a lot of attention on the other side of the field. He's incredibly productive. So a 1 to 2 year deal for another young guy, maybe it does not 100% fit your idea of a budget free agent, but I think it would help the team.
If like he's off, he's coming off of, a really down year where he missed a lot of time and he hasn't played as well. If the price goes down, I mean, it looks like, a 1 year, I think they projected that as kind of a prove it deal, 1 year deal. If you can, I mean, the talent's there. Again, another former second round pick had 111 receptions in 2018, has had good play, right?
Absolutely.
If you can get a guy on a budget deal who's talented, I don't hate it. He's 6'1", 215, so he's a little bit taller receiver, although he's played a lot in the slot, but what they really need is an outside receiver, but he has played some outside.
Yeah.
So I don't hate it. It's obviously not the player I picked for tonight, but he's had a couple of years off years, but again, with that, what you look for a budget is a player who you're paying less than market, what they're worth, or getting a good deal. So that's part of why you would be getting him for a good deal. You're taking a bet you're taking a wager that a guy who has his pedigree and has performed is going to get better, right?
Yeah,
And
the only way a deal would happen with a guy like Juju, who is young and has had some really, really good years and thinks he's worth a certain amount, is that he was injured last year and had an incredibly down year. But when you do look at the production that he did have in a year like 2018, which I get was 3 years ago, 1,400 yards as a number 2. Those are fantastic numbers, and he's capable of a lot of production when he's healthy. Like Chris said, I am not concerned about 1 year of down production because I know what caused it. If he had been completely healthy and had a remarkably down year, I might be concerned in some way. But
yeah, and that's a good point. It had Big Ben throwing on not a great year, right? Someone's asked a couple times about Jamison Crowder. Jamison Crowder is an underrated receiver, but he is more of a slot receiver.
yeah,
That's the one drawback. And the Cardinals have right now an abundance of slot receivers. If they don't bring back Kirk, well, then maybe not. But I actually like Greg Dortch as a backup slot in Rondale Moore. And then if they do bring back Kirk, so I think what they need in a receiver is that big outside receiver. Let me say real quick, hey to a couple of folks. Elliot, I think I said hey to you earlier, but yeah, I don't think they're going to go big money on receiver because I think they're going to try to bring back Ertz. They might bring back Kirk, and you already have Hopkins on a really big contract. I don't think they're going to do that. Let me say, Mr. Mono, I appreciate you being here. Another longtime supporter of the channel. He's more talking about more of a slot receiver. We need a guy on the outside. So what I've looked at is this is probably the most potentially budget pick of the night. It's like, in fact, this next player, he was in my video, but he was not on PFF's top 200, but he fits the bill. Okay. For this guy, Auden Tate is 6'5", 220 something pounds. Former 6th round pick, I think 6th or 7th round pick of the Bengals, got buried on the depth chart with a Bengals team that has a very deep receiving core, right? So there's him getting buried on the depth chart there isn't necessarily the worst thing. He doesn't mean he's not a good receiver. And a couple of years back, I think it was 2019, he had 40 receptions, 500 something yards. And, so Auden Tate is a guy who I would love to see him compete with Antoine Wesley. And maybe they bring in a rookie. Maybe they draft a big receiver, maybe, who's also got this kind of profile, and get those guys competing, and whoever wins the starting job or, plays the most snaps. But even if you have to platoon them a little bit, he fits the mold of that big outside receiver. And, I have PFF salary projection NA because he's not even on that list. I think you could get him for probably $1 to $2 million. And I got Jordan, Jordan's kind of, kind of naysaying, but, let's see. Auden Tate isn't anything. We need DJ Chark. I'll tell you, first of all, don't hate on him. Check him out. He's a budget option, but he's got something to work with. DJ Chark's going to be expensive. They were projecting $10-11 million on PFF. Now he may or may not, but I think he's going to be more expensive than you think there, Jordan. So here's the deal. Like if the Cardinals are going to if the Cardinals spend big money on that outside receiver, like some of you want them to, then say goodbye to Ertz and Kirk probably, or at least one of them.
Yeah.
I think they're going to want to bring back Ertz and maybe Kirk, and I think they're going to go budget route on that other outside receiver. I know a lot of people want those big, receivers, but I think, and now Chark is actually a big receiver. And let me say, I like Chark, and he was the guy I looked at, but the price tag is just too big, in my opinion. So I'm going with a guy, and a lot of people, and I know the Cardinals like some of the things they saw in Antoine Wesley. So part of this pick is the idea that we're giving Antoine Wesley a chance to compete for snaps. And then you bring in someone like Auden Tate, who also can compete with them. And between the two of them, they potentially fill that role, right?
Yes.
So they're asking, does AJ come back? I mean, I know the fans don't want him to. I could see them bring him back, but I don't know. I mean, it was good and bad, right? He had some big catches, but he also, we all know the play.
We know.
So anyway, I get it. So I think we're both getting a little bit of pushback on our receiver picks,
Yeah.
and so I think and Jordan thinks if they sign Kirk, they can't, then we can't get a mid-tier receiver. So he thinks, so listen, if you think Kirk is leaving Jordan and you think then they'll pay on that outside receiver spot, I could see that, because here's the argument for Jordan's kind of projection. It's the Cardinals decide we saw enough in Greg Dortch in at least in the few snaps. He did look good in the very few snaps. And we're going to go with Rondale Moore and Greg Dortch as our slot receivers. Maybe we'll draft someone later to back them up, and we're going to invest in that other outside receiver spot. That would be the way that they spend more on the outside receiver. But I think they're going to bring Kirk back and Ertz. We'll see, right?
I do think that Ertz is a given almost. You got to bring him back. You can't have a tight end who played a little bit more than half a season with you have the best tight end season for your franchise in decades and not bring him back. I think you have to. Kirk, I guess 60 to 65 or 70% chance that he resigns. I think something gets worked out there. He's probably going to want a little bit more than he might realistically be worth. But I just have a feeling that the team's going to bring him back. And I also have a feeling that AJ Green's not going to be on the team next year. So that leaves that second outside receiver. And like Jordan P. and other people have kind of mentioned, if you do bring Kirk and Ertz back, you got to make decisions, and you can't pay a $10 to $12 million guy on the other side of DeAndre Hopkins. So
yeah,
on tape, I don't hate it. I think Juju is in a different tier of wide receiver. That also means his cost is going to be in a different tier than on Tate. So there's just a lot of the money moves on offense that are going to determine how much you can actually spend on that position.
Yeah, absolutely. And just real quick, let me get one coming here. Someone's asking about Max Williams and Zach Ertz both on the roster. I love that combination because Williams is more the blocker, but he's a capable receiver. Ertz is more the receiver, but he's a decent blocker. I think underrated blocker. But you just get a really nice combination there. So 100%. And real quick, say hey to Calvin. Appreciate you being here. And let me real quick, Calvin is a channel member. Let me use that as a quick opportunity to do my shout out to my channel members, the folks who support the channel. Want you guys to know that I appreciate you. So here's all the channel members. Thank you guys, the Ring of Honor and the starting lineup, who help support the channel. And as I've mentioned a few times, I've been doing some upgrades to my gear. If you can see, my camera is, a little bit higher quality. I've been investing. So your support, I'm reinvesting it in the channel. So, but I thank you all for that. And Calvin still has the designation, I don't want to say honor because that sounds too important about me, but he has he was the first super chat on the channel. So I remember that. So Calvin, thank you for your support. Appreciate that. And if anyone else I missed in here, thank you for being here. So let's move on to your next pick. All right, Kyler, and your next pick is a cornerback, Dante Jackson.
Yeah. This one absolutely stretches the definition of budget. So before anyone comes at me for the pedantics of what budget means, this is in comparison to what I would prefer at cornerback. So my preference at cornerback, because I think it's a position that you have to make the big splash in free agency. It's the one with enough really high tier talent out there that you can spend big and get the big one. Of course, I, like many people, would love JC Jackson. It'd be a wonderful free agent pick. I think you have to spend a lot of money to get a guy like that. But Dante Jackson, he's still young. He still plays well in a man scheme like Vance Joseph likes. And 2 years for $10 million a year, it's a lot of money for sure. But when you look at the problems that came up from the lack of cornerback depth in 2021, you can't not address it. You have to address it in some big way. And honestly, I don't think the draft is going to cut it with cornerback. the team went into the season banking on an experienced veteran like Malcolm Butler being part of the team. Dante Jackson adds a lot of that experience to the team. He's very talented. And for the age and talent and potential, I don't think 2 years for $10 million a year is that bad. Especially in comparison to like a top tier JC Jackson or whatever it would cost to take Stephon Gilmore, who I personally wouldn't take just because of the age at that position. But I like Dante Jackson a lot. I'm really curious what other people have to say about this position because let's see, Mr. Mono 187, is Dante Jackson a scheme fit? It's something you have to consider with cornerbacks. It's like Richard Sherman. He played kind of in the same scheme his whole career and kind of never played in anything else, and teams built their scheme around him. Dante Jackson, he's played in a lot of zone. I think he's more than capable of playing press like that Vance Joseph wants. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the book on him, he's a little more of a zone. So I think there's a couple things I definitely agree with you on. I mean, they need to fix cornerback, and I agree that in terms of at least for the immediate, you're not fixing it in the draft this year because even a good first round cornerback typically needs a year or two before they're really ready.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean we shouldn't draft a cornerback. I would rather see them draft a cornerback on like day 2, maybe round 2, maybe 3 or even 4, and go with the free agent route for starters. I think they need considering of course that Robert Alford is a free agent. I think they need to sign 2 veteran cornerbacks.
I agree.
Who are starting caliber. Mm-hmm. They don't have to be high end because you're going to have, Byron Murphy Jr., Marco Wilson coming back, Antonio Hamilton, who played really nice as kind of a slot guy. Mm-hmm. So I think what they need to do is get themselves 2 guys that can play those outside roles. Basically, they need to get the guys who are going to replace Alford from last year and Marco Wilson's role, and let Marco Wilson be the guy who's a little bit, further down the depth chart. So I think they need to sign 2 of them. So one of them is going to have to be a really budget guy, right? Yeah. And one of them maybe they'll spend a little more. Dante Jackson, for me, he's a young player. I like that, but I wouldn't want, if this is what he costs, $10 million, if I'm spending that much, I don't know. He didn't grade particularly well. I mean, I shouldn't say it wasn't horrible, but like his PFF grades were, 61.3 this last year. He had a 70.4 the year before. I mean, so he's young. He's decent. He's got some interceptions, a little bit of a ball hawk, but it's one of those things where like you want either elite or a little more budget for me. Right?
Yeah.
And when I look at what the Cardinals did last year, first 2/3 of the season, they had Robert Alford, Marco Wilson, Byron Murphy Jr., Antonio Hamilton. Those 4 cornerbacks were really kind of the unit. Mm-hmm. And on paper coming in, you'd be like, I'm worried about that, right? But like they had a top 10 passing defense while those guys were healthy. Mm-hmm. And yes, Marco Wilson got beat a few times, particularly in the red zone. He kind of, guys who were good route runners kind of made him look a little silly at points. He looked like a rookie. It was rough. But their cornerbacks did not get like habitually beat, game in, game out. So what that tells me is that if Vance Joseph has serviceable corners and enough of them to withstand injuries, he can get good play out of guys without having elite guys. It was when they were starting guys off the street, Breon Borders and guys like that, and practice squad guys late in the season where it started getting ugly. So for me, I'd rather go with a couple guys that are less expensive, but get 2 of them. So that's me. So, and one of those guys might be, this is my budget. This guy was not on my video, is Levi Wallace from the Buffalo Bills. He would be 3 years at $6.33 million a year. So he's a little, he's less expensive, than Dante is. And he actually in his career has graded a little better overall. He had a little bit of an off year, 61.6. But I think, he's young, just like Dante Jackson is. He's going to be a little cheaper. I think if you got Levi Wallace on the outside and brought in one other guy along with him, and maybe like the guy in my video, Kello Witherspoon is another guy that I had. So, something like that. Or, I know some people really want to go with the big dollar guy. I wouldn't be opposed to that, like a JC Jackson or Gilmore. But I'd almost rather see them go with a couple guys like in this tier and draft someone and just have that depth, so that they can withstand the injuries. I don't know. What do you think about that, Kyler?
I like the strategy on that because you bring up the very good point that the beginning of the season was not bad with the cornerbacks that the team had. The depth was tested, and that's when we started to see some pretty poor secondary play. And along the theory that rookie cornerbacks kind of take a little bit to develop, I think that's usually very true. And I think we saw some pretty good things out of Marco Wilson in 2021. We saw him get embarrassed a few times, sure, but that was later in the season when things were a little bit iffier. And he just had some of those rookie struggles. I think he can develop. I don't think he's ever going to be CB1. But, he might surprise us. So I like your theory of you just need to get serviceable starters more than you need to get superstars.
Mm-hmm.
I think that works out. I personally would still go that route. So like I've seen in the comments, I've seen a lot about Stephon Gilmore. So I understand the desire to have him. And it's going to depend on what Vance Joseph or the franchise is going to desire in the secondary. Because right now it's pretty young with Byron Murphy and Marco Wilson. If that's sort of your core in that group and Robert Alford walks away, Stephon Gilmore is a 1 to 2 year lease. He's obviously not the future of that group. So that's part of it. Because do you take Stephon Gilmore for 1 to 2 years, and he's undeniably very good when he plays, and still draft another cornerback this year, pretty high, maybe even first or second round? That might be a route that they go. I would still go along the lines of getting a big number one cornerback, but like JC Jackson, you pay him good money. He's still young, and he's young enough to continue to be a part of the core of the secondary for a long time. Mm-hmm. That's how I would choose to look at the secondary, but I 100% get what you're saying. I like Levi Wallace. Mm-hmm. The Bills secondary, Jordan Poyer and Levi Wallace, they have a good group on defense, and Levi Wallace is very good. I like that option.
Yeah, and I know Jordan's saying we need a true number one, and let me tell you, there's this kind of philosophy, and sometimes people talk about positions in sports as being a weak link position or a strong link position, and maybe I've talked about this in here before, but there's this sort of philosophy where there are certain things and positions in sports where the most important thing is your strongest link. And then there's other things where the most important question is, what is your weakest link? Okay.
Yeah.
And pass rush is a strongest link sort of a thing. If you've got a guy who's a game wrecker and maybe one other guy who's decent, even if the rest of your pass rushers aren't the best, those 1-2 guys can get through and make something happen. Even if they're not all great. And even basketball is, Suns are playing right now. That's a strong link sort of a sport where one or two couple stars get it done. But there's some things where a weakest link is actually the most important thing is how good is your weakest link. Coverage is a weakest link position group, which means you don't have to have the best player on the field in terms of coverage. You need to not have the weakest. Right, because if one of your cornerbacks is the worst, is really bad, he's going to get picked on. So what you actually need in coverage, in my opinion, if you can get a transcendent star who changes the math, like Jalen Ramsey, sure. But I think based on the way coverage works, you're actually better off to have 4 good coverage players than 1 elite, 2 good, and 1 bad. Because that 1 bad is going to screw it up for you. So it's one of those positions that just philosophically and in the way things work is actually where the most important thing is how bad is your weakest link, not how good is your strongest. So that's the underpinning philosophy I take when it comes to with cornerbacks, and it's the same way with offensive line, really.
Mhm.
So that's why one of the reasons I'm there. And I get some people really think you need to have that elite number one corner. I don't think you need it. I think you need to not have a bad number 3 corner.
That is beautifully said. You know what, guys? I'm wrong. Okay, Levi Wallace is a beautiful choice. Um, that's a great theory. I hadn't actually heard that before, but it makes a lot of sense. Like
Mhm.
quarterback, strong link. Your success rides on the success of your quarterback, so that makes total sense. But O line, yeah, it's 5 players working in tandem as a unit to make something happen. And if you have a weak link like the interior, it's going to get taken advantage of by guys like Aaron Donald again and again and
Mhm.
again. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like it.
Yeah. So that's my philosophy and a few others. Well, and I'm sticking to it, right? So for the sake of time, let's get on to our next pick, though. You have Linval Joseph, who
Mhm.
is obviously a defensive tackle. So let's talk about why you think why you fit him.
Okay. So, my first pick, not talking about budget, would be Calais Campbell. I know so many people want to bring him back to Arizona. I'm one of them. He's fantastic. He's a little bit older, but D tackles and O linemen can maybe play a little bit longer than some other positions and still be very effective. But compared to someone like Calais Campbell or Akeem Hicks, Linval Joseph is budget in that sense. A 1-year deal projection for 6.75 million. He's 33. He's over that 30-year line, but I think that's totally fine. And the biggest thing to me is he just have a very proven track record on run defense. Obviously, that was just one of the biggest thorns in the side of the Cardinals defense for the entire season. He's been very good throughout his career at that part of his position. And for a 1-year deal at that price, it's not that bad, especially considering what JJ Watt's going to be making next year. So I don't think you can sink crazy amounts of money into that position. He's super effective. The price is good. The age is fine. And what he's particularly good at in that run defense and gap coverage and protection, I think is exactly what the team needs.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it so much, right? Run defense was such a huge problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they need to address the interior defensive line. I know a lot of people are really down on the young linebackers. Xavier Collins didn't see the field nearly enough. Isaiah Simmons, kind of struggled a bit. He saw the field a lot this year. But when I had Brett Coleman on the show, he talked about this a little bit, and he thinks that interior defensive line is one of the reasons those linebackers are struggling. That they're not, the
Mm-hmm.
defensive line isn't kind of giving them what they need in terms of cleaning up blocks and things like that. So it's one of those things where it could be a force multiplier. If you fix a defensive line, you might also get out of those interior, those middle linebackers, what we wanted to see from them. You might make 2 positions better by addressing one position, right?
Yeah, and back to your strong link, weak link thing. That's one of those positions. A dominant guy on interior defense, like an Aaron Donald, and definitely not saying Linval Joseph is anywhere near that, but a really dominant interior defensive player can change the defensive identity of a team overnight. Even in the first 7 games of 2021, JJ Watt had a massive impact based off what we could see after he was out. So that one super impactful player at an important position like defensive tackle, it can make all the difference in the world. And you can see that giant flip from bad run defense to good run defense. You see it all the time. Teams become great at a thing that they were previously horrible at. That's I wasn't thinking that when I chose Linval Joseph, but I'm so glad that you brought that theory up because it plays perfectly into why I would sign him.
Yeah, you get that one guy in there, that big space eater, that block of granite in the
Mhm.
middle, who holds up those defense or those offensive linemen, takes up those blocks, and frees up those linebackers to get in there and make plays. That one player can change the calculus, right, of that
Mhm.
of what's going on with the run defense. So I like it. And again, we're talking about how do you get a budget player? You get a player who, for some reason, is going to be less valuable than his play. Well, in terms of his contract, or is going to cost less than the value he brings. And a player who's in his 30s is often going to cost less, right? And,
Mhm.
because they're on the downside of their career and so on and so forth. And so, bringing in an experienced defensive tackle who still has some good play in him, and you don't need a guy who's the fastest guy. Even if he's lost a step, that's fine. He just needs to still be that big, strong run stopper in the middle. So I like that, and so I kind of followed your lead, and I went with another guy who's very similar in a lot of ways, and that's Sheldon Richardson,
Mm.
another defensive tackle. He's a few years younger and a little bit cheaper, at least the projection. 1 year, $3 million. Linval Joseph has been a better player throughout his career.
Yeah.
When you look at his PFF grades. However, when you look at how does this make sense, they seem to be both at the same point, if that makes sense, in that, like, in fact, their PFF, Linval Joseph's PFF grade last year was 63.1, which is one of his lower in his career. So he's kind of on that downtrend, but it's still serviceable. And, and Sheldon Richardson was 62.1. So it's like Joseph is a better player, but he's a couple years older, if that makes sense. So his decline's a little further down the road. So I feel like they're pretty comparable players at this point. And then when you're talking about older players, a concern is health. And one of the things I liked about Richardson when I looked at his profile is the dude doesn't really miss a lot of games. He's been very healthy throughout his career.
Very durable.
So so I like Sheldon Richardson as kind of another guy who fits the same idea you were looking for with Linval Joseph. And I think either one of them could be a nice fit. Let me real quick say hey to some of the folks that have jumped in here. Apologies if I said hey to everyone. Apology. Thanks for being here. Pass and Clay's best days are behind him. Kyler's right about the advantage versus the run. Beef up the middle like this kid from Georgia, Jordan Davis, find a free agent defensive tackle. Thanks for being here, Paul. I love Calais Campbell, and I wouldn't mind having him back if the price is right. But, yeah. So thoughts on Sheldon Richardson?
I like Sheldon Richardson a lot as well. I have absolutely nothing against the pick. And if it's coming down to money math, and if that PFF salary projection is anywhere close to accurate, then that might help fill another position a little bit better. So younger, cheaper, that's great. You might have beat me again on this one. I do think, and even regardless of what PFF or any other grading thing says, based off the careers and what I've seen of both of these players, Linval Joseph is the better player. So if you're going just for the better player to fill that gap, I would still go with Linval Joseph, but moving money around, Sheldon Richardson is a great option as well.
Yeah, I think either one of them could be a really good fit, right?
Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at Lance's question right now about if everyone was back and completely healthy, would we be okay? And it's the second part of your question, Lance, that I think is the problem. Do you want big bodies to eat the line? I think yes. Calais is the definition of that type of player, and he's been dominant as that type of player because he's just a giant of a man. But I think that actually has an impact on the linebackers and how we've been using them. You do have to plug up the middle like that. So even with JJ, Zach, Fotu, Peters all back in a perfect world, I think you still need to get better at that position. And I don't have anything against Zach Allen and Lucky Fotu. I actually rather like both of them in their own ways. Lucky Fotu is a very serviceable backup. But when you get started to put in positions where he's your starter, you start to have some serious issues on that part of the team. Zach Allen, if he keeps developing, he can actually turn out to be a really good player, actually. But I think you have to get better at that position, and whether or not you're doing it through budget wise, or you're going after a big guy, or you're drafting a guy like Jordan Davis, who, I mean, he's not going to be there at 23. I think you have to trade up to get a guy like Jordan Davis. I like either Linval Joseph or Sheldon Richardson.
Yeah. And to kind of build on what you're saying, address Lance's question. I mean, if we knew they would all be back and healthy, and I think there's a name, and I know you're just kind of listing them off the top of your head, a very important name that wasn't in that is Rashard Lawrence, who I actually think is one of their better run defending defensive linemen when he did play. Just he was injured for so much of the season. If I knew we had all of them back and healthy, they'd be serviceable. Obviously, J.J. Watt's really good. Fotu hasn't lived up to, develop the way they would hope. Peters is a little older. He missed some time. Lawrence missed time. But if we knew we had them all back, they'd be decent and serviceable. But I agree. They need an infusion of a better pedigree, more of a blue chip. They need a guy in there and that interior, a young guy. The guy I really like is Travis Jones out of UConn, and I've been talking about him a lot. So he's a guy they could probably get in the second round. So if Davis isn't there, so for me, bring back J.J. Watt. Obviously, he's still under contract. Zach Allen, bring him back. Fotu, Rashard Lawrence. Draft someone like Travis Jones. And I'd feel pretty good about the direction they were going there. But I do think they need someone in the middle there to kind of eat up those blocks. And let's real quick say hey to your comrade in arms, Aaron Van Buren. Why is Kyler? Why are you in Dolphins colors?
I didn't plan it like that. I was simply wearing a Suns hat because they're playing right now. So no, not Dolphins colors. These are, okay, this has nothing to do with anything, but Suns colors, Aaron, Suns.
There you go. All right, so we have just a couple minutes. So and first of all, thank you for everyone who's here. If I didn't get to all your comments, I apologize. I try to, like I said, acknowledge each person at least once. If I missed you or your comment, I apologize. But thank you all for being here. So let's, on our way out, we got just a few minutes. Everyone, if you could pick one budget free agent, not any free agent, but one guy who you think isn't going to cost a ton, that you think meets a really great need for the Cardinals, put that in the kind of in the chat, and let's see who is your one. If you had to pick one value free agent, who's that one value free agent that you think would not take up too much salary cap, but you think would just really be a nice addition? The next James Conner, right? The guy who on a really great deal, really, produces really well. So let's get those comments in the chat and we'll go through some of them. And for anyone who's wondering, the Suns are up 92-86. We'll get out of here before the game's over, I think. So one free agent, if you had to pick one value free agent for the Suns to pick up. And while we're waiting for those, just let me ask you, Kyler, actually, we've got some in, so we can jump to that. Okay. I was looking to take some time, but okay. James Daniel, guard center from Chicago. Okay. I know some people have kind of talked about him as I've seen it in our Discord, I'll use that. And Raphael, thank you for being here. I think this is the first comment I've brought up of yours. If you aren't part of our Discord, in the description below, there's a link for the Discord. There's like 90 something folks in there. And throughout the week, people comment and have conversations, and it's really a good way to kind of stay connected to the community. So if you aren't already part of the Discord, I'd encourage you to click on that link and join. It's just a way to kind of keep the conversation going throughout the week. But I've seen James Daniel mentioned a lot in the Discord. Dante Jackson, Nick agrees with you there. Okay. Thank you for being here, Chris. I appreciate you. Hey, I'm glad you're enjoying them. I really appreciate you being here for them. Jordan P with DJ Chark or Calais. I don't think they're going to be cheap, but hey, let's see. I wouldn't mind, but I want Murray protected so we can have him healthier. Connor Williams. Okay. So Kathy, and thank you for being here, Kathy. Martin Peralta says we need Calvin Ridley. Okay, I think you'd have to trade for him, right? Unless he's still on a rookie deal. I know there's a lot of stuff going on with him. We got another guard, Mark Lewinsky. Okay, Nice. So we got some receivers, some offensive line. Okay. Awesome. Let's see. Backup quarterback is gone after this year. Like Colt McCoy, I think is a free agent. But he's not going to be terribly expensive if they want to bring him back. I know earlier someone in the chat mentioned Tyrod Taylor. I think Houston really likes Tyrod. I think they're going to bring him back.
Yeah.
But listen, last year in free agency, that was a guy. I love Tyrod. He's a class act. He's a guy you want on your team. He's a guy I was hoping they were going to sign as a backup. Thank you for I was going to join that. Hey man, thank you for the positive feedback. And yeah, look forward to having you in the Discord. Let's see. Bringing back the squad. Okay. Zach Pascal, another receiver, right? Let's see. Poppy. Who's that? Maybe I'm missing something. All right. You don't know, but Keim is full of surprises. That's true. Mm-hmm. They're not always good surprises. Sometimes they are. Like, DeAndre Hopkins, Rodney Hudson. But listen, the AJ Green, and I'm not saying that was a good surprise, but that caught me.
That was wild.
Completely by surprise.
The JJ Watt caught me by surprise.
Yeah, that too. Like, I get AJ Green in terms of that's what they want on the outside. Now I get that, but that surprised me. And then JJ Watt, yeah. You really need protection, bro. Okay. Houston's not bringing Tyrod. Okay. Then I wouldn't mind him as a backup. Evan Ingram. Okay, that's interesting. Tight end. I feel like the Cardinals are going to bring back their tight ends, but yeah, who knows? And last, thanks for reminding folks to hit the like button. I appreciate you remind everyone. Can we get Calvin Ridley? Well, Calvin Ridley, I think he's still on his rookie deal. You'd have to trade for him, right? It'd be a cheap contract, but if I'm not mistaken, so it's kind of, he wouldn't be cheap in that. I think you'd have to trade for him. Hey, thank you. I appreciate that, Kathy. I appreciate that. I'm glad you're here. If Murray does get traded, what happened? I don't think they're trading Murray.
No.
I just don't think it's happening.
No.
And I think here's the deal. I think this year is a pivotal year where Cliff's job is on the line this year 4. Mm-hmm. And they're not if they're getting rid of Kyler, they might as well fire Cliff, or they need to commit to Cliff longer. Because if they bring Cliff back for year 4 and don't let him have Kyler to work with, they're not giving him a fair chance in this 4th year.
Yep.
So I think they're bringing back Kyler, or they're going to keep Kyler. They're bringing back Cliff. And this next year, they're going to make a decision on both of them. That's what I think is going on. So that's my opinion. My opinion on Keim, I've been a defender in the past, but I'm a little more down on him now because the draft picks haven't been good. Later draft picks as well. He does sometimes good in free agency, does good in trades. The draft hasn't been great lately. And there's also just some stuff with some of the interpersonal stuff. I feel like some of the players are a little soured on the organization because of him. You just hear some players not liking him. And I get, like, Patrick Peterson was sour grapes out the door. And I'm not taking Patrick Peterson's side on that. I still think Patrick Peterson didn't approach it in a mature way, but that is not mutually exclusive with the idea that Keim is maybe being a little shisty as well. I don't know. What do you think about that, Kyler?
I agree. I used to actually defend Keim on Twitter and other internet places, but I'm losing a little bit of patience with him because of the roster position that we're getting put in because of the draft. He keeps saving his reputation by big blockbuster trades, and so we've gotten some great Hall of Fame caliber players in the last couple of years. But if you can't build a team through the draft, you don't deserve to be a general manager of an NFL franchise. And even the use of first-round picks, not even just building depth in the later rounds, but it seems like a completely irresponsible use of first-round picks as well. There's less and less that you can defend about him, especially as a drafter.
Yeah. And, Wolf here, has got, and Wolf likes to throw some nice polarizing things out there, but they're always entertaining. But Keim is a snake in the grass. I don't like using that kind of language, but that kind of epitomizes the thing that I like, that you just kind of start hearing, and you just like, I saw someone who I follow on Twitter, who I respect the work they do on Twitter, and it's someone who's, follows the league wide, and as someone that a lot of people who are in the NFL space respect on Twitter, who kind of basically said that Keim sort of has this reputation for leaking information to the media to try to manipulate things. And I'm just seeing enough little things that make me just feel like maybe he's, and I hate to say that, but anyway, yeah, I think we got this one last question. We'll probably end on this because we got to get us out of here in an hour. That's if we traded 2 or 3 for Ridley, worth it. What do you think?
I don't know. I, for some reason, have a lot of reservations about Calvin Ridley. He's had some really good play with Julio. I don't know. I don't even know if I can truly explain it, but my gut feeling is no, and he's just not a good fit for the team.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't actually know what else to say other than Calvin Ridley just doesn't strike me as even a potential avenue for this team.
So let me tell you how I feel, and I kind of agree with you, and maybe I might be able to articulate some of the things you're thinking. He's a great player, was a burgeoning star, and then stepped away for some personal things. And I never want to drag anyone through the mud dealing with stuff like that, because I don't know what's going on in the world in his life. But you don't know that those issues are resolved. So you're trading for a guy who has just some risk about whether he's going to be back or not.
Yeah.
But beyond that, okay, he's on his rookie deal, another year or two. If you're trading for him, you are also going to have to pay him soon, and pay him a lot if he works. If you're paying him, then you're paying him a lot, because that means he worked out.
Yeah.
So you're trading a second or third round pick for a guy who's late in his rookie deal. You've missed out on that benefit of those first couple years. You're getting ready to pay him. You're already paying DeAndre Hopkins a lot. And on top of all of that, I don't think he's the fit for what they need. He's like 6'1", 100 and something. I think he's not tiny, but he's not that big outside receiver. He's going to be a number 1 receiver for a team somewhere if he plays up to his potential. And they already have that guy that's going to play the role. And, they don't need another slot receiver, whereas I think he does play a lot out of the slot, if I'm not mistaken, but he's not that big, high point 50-50 ball receiver on the outside. So I just don't think it's a scheme fit for what they need, unless he was replacing Hopkins. So just for a lot of little reasons, I just don't think it's the right fit. So, anyway, listen, I know there's some other comments. Thank you all for being here. I apologize I can't get to them all, but I try to acknowledge at least one comment from each person I see here. And I thank you all for being here. We'll do this again next Thursday with a different topic. And one last plug, Mock Draft Mondays is also another stream I'm doing. That'll be up. I'll get the link up for that before long. Do a mock draft. I'll have a description or instructions for how to do that. Tweet it at me. We'll get it in the show. We had a great show last Monday. It was a lot of fun. So if you want to get into draft season, check out Mock Draft Monday, the live stream I do. So I really appreciate that you all being here, and look forward to seeing you all Monday. Kyler, thank you for being here. Where can people find you?
You can find me predominantly on Twitter at the that you see under me, at azcard_birdseye. Pretty active on Twitter. I know it's the off season, so I'm trying to come up with a lot of stats and things to throw out you guys to just instigate some conversation. So we can keep interacting as Cardinals community. I know we're not the biggest online community, but the people that I've met through Twitter and doing stuff like this with you, it's always a lot of fun. Love interacting with you guys and talking about the team.
Yeah, make sure you follow him. I follow Kyler on Twitter, and he's always got a lot of great comments and a lot of things on Twitter. He's a great follow. I definitely enjoy that, following you on Twitter and interacting with you there as well. So, Kyler, thank you for being here. Thank you, everyone, for being here. We're going to end the stream. We'll see y'all next time. Peace, everyone.